This quiet playmaker may look like just another assist guy, but the way he moved the puck on the power play influenced NHL coaches to rethink aspects of their systems. Nicklas Bäckström was never the loudest voice in the room. He didn't have a flashy shot, he wasn't the fastest skater, and yet, if you watch the Washington Capitals for even a few minutes, you notice something strange. Every time the puck touched his stick, the ice shifted. Defenders froze, goaltenders leaned, teammates moved into perfect spots without even looking. Because they knew Bäckström would find them. Over the years, fans called him underrated, quiet, even boring, but behind that calm face was a mind playing a different game. While others relied on speed or power, Bäckström relied on vision, seeing 2 plays ahead, turning nothing into something, and delivering passes that looked simple but weren't. He wasn't just stacking assists, he was shaping how the NHL thinks about passing on the man advantage. From the half wall, with his head up and stick loose, he made teams rethink how to defend the power play. And once he figured out where the gaps were, he didn't need to yell, he just let his passing speak. So how did this soft-spoken Swede become one of the most quietly influential players of his era? To find out, we need to go back to where it all started. If Nicklas Bäckström hadn't evolved the Capitals' power play, we might still be watching some of the same old dump and chase setups today. Before Bäckström came into the NHL, many power plays were slow and could be predictable. Teams would cycle the puck around the boards hoping for a lucky bounce or a rebound in front. Many power plays focused on putting the puck on net and crashing for second chances. It worked sometimes, but it wasn't always smart or dynamic. Bäckström changed that. He didn't just fit into the Capitals' power play, he became the brain behind it. Once he set up on the half wall, everything changed. He slowed the game down without actually slowing it. He created space where there was none, with one small move, a head fake, a look-off, a soft touch pass. He made defenders hesitate, and in that split second, the Capitals attacked. Suddenly, other teams noticed. Coaches studied his movements. They began designing their own power plays around patient playmakers rather than pure shooters. Younger players studied his tape. His influence wasn't loud, but it was everywhere. If you watch today's NHL power plays, you'll notice how many teams now rely on a half-wall distributor. That's not a coincidence, that's the Bäckström effect, and the crazy part, he made it look effortless. But the journey to becoming that kind of player, it started long before the NHL. And it wasn't easy. Nicklas Bäckström was born in Gävle, a small city on the east coast of Sweden, where winters were long and the ice was never far away. For most kids there, hockey wasn't just a game, it was a part of growing up. But even in a place where almost everyone played, Nicklas stood out early. His father, Anders Bäckström, was more than just a supportive dad. He was a former professional hockey player himself and had coached for Brynäs IF, one of Sweden's top clubs. But Anders wasn't the loud, pushy type of sports parent. He believed in patience, in letting the game come to you, and that belief would quietly shape Nicklas for the rest of his life. As a kid, Nicklas didn't have the biggest shot or the fastest legs, but he had something most others didn't. He saw the game differently. When other players chased the puck, he anticipated where it would go next. He'd make passes that seemed impossible at first, only to find an open teammate right on the tape. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't loud, but it worked. People around Gävle began to notice. Coaches would tell stories about how the young Bäckström could run a practice drill like a seasoned veteran. He wasn't the type to dominate with goals. He dominated with decisions. You'd blink, and somehow the puck was already where it needed to be. Growing up in Sweden gave him a unique foundation. The Swedish hockey system focuses on team play, puck control, and smart positioning. It's not about showing off, it's about doing the right thing at the right time. That matched Nicklas's personality perfectly. He never felt the need to be the center of attention. He just wanted to make the right play every time. And while he admired NHL stars from afar, players like Peter Forsberg, who combined vision with toughness, Bäckström never tried to copy anyone exactly. He built his own style, step by step. At home, his father would show him tape, break down plays, and talk about spacing and timing. It wasn't about yelling or pushing, it was about understanding. Nicklas also played other sports as a kid, including soccer. That helped him build his balance, timing, and spatial awareness, skills that later became a major part of his hockey IQ. On the ice, he began to see not just the players, but the gaps between them. He learned how to make those gaps bigger with one small move, a head fake, a shoulder dip, a delay. By his early teens, it was clear that Nicklas was on another level. He joined the Brynäs IF youth system, the same club his father had played and coached for. There, he kept growing, not just in skill, but in confidence. Teammates trusted him with the puck. Coaches built power plays around him even at a young age. And he kept responding, not with ego, but with execution. He made his debut in Sweden's top league at just 16 years old. It was rare, but no one was surprised. He didn't look out of place. In fact, he looked like he belonged. Bäckström's early years weren't filled with highlight reel goals or viral moments. They were filled with learning, with discipline, and with a quiet hunger to get better. He was never chasing attention. He was chasing the perfect pass, and that calm, methodical approach, the one built in the cold rinks of Yevle, shaped by his father's steady hand, and sharpened through years of quiet work, would one day reshape the NHL's most dangerous power play. But before he could do that, he had to take the next step, leaving home, crossing the ocean, and stepping into the biggest spotlight of his life. When the Washington Capitals drafted Nicklas Bäckström with the 4th overall pick in 2006, most of the attention wasn't on him. It was on the guy already wearing number 8. Alexander Ovechkin had taken the NHL by storm just a year earlier. He was loud, explosive, and everywhere, on the highlight reels, in the interviews, in the headlines. So, when Bäckström arrived from Sweden, quiet and composed, it was easy for most people to overlook him. He didn't make bold statements. He didn't crave the spotlight. He just came in, put his head down, and started working. But inside the Capitals organization, they knew what they had. They weren't just looking for a second star to pair with Ovi. They were looking for a brain, a player who could slow the game down and see things others missed. And in Bäckström, they found exactly that. From the beginning, the chemistry between him and Ovechkin was undeniable. On paper, it made sense. One was a sniper, the other a passer. But it wasn't just about roles, it was about trust. Ovechkin knew that if he got into the right spot, the puck would be there. No yelling, no signaling, just a soft tape-to-tape pass, arriving at exactly the right moment. Their connection didn't need time to develop, it was there from the start. And even as a rookie, Bäckström showed poise far beyond his age. He didn't force plays, he didn't panic. He read the ice like someone who had been in the league for a decade. But while Ovi celebrated every goal with emotion and flair, Bäckström was the opposite. Score or assist, win or lose, his expression barely changed. Some mistook it for coldness, but those inside the room knew it was just his style. He let his game do the talking. Still, the adjustment to the NHL wasn't simple. The speed, the physicality, the smaller ice, all of it was different from what he was used to in Sweden. But instead of fighting it, Bäckström adapted. He learned how to protect the puck in tight spaces. He figured out when to slow down and when to strike. And most of all, he started learning how to lead. Off the ice, he stayed quiet. He wasn't the type to speak up in meetings or give locker room speeches, but his teammates quickly realized that when Bäckström did speak, it mattered. And on the bench in the middle of games, he was always locked in, reading the play, thinking a step ahead. By the end of his rookie year, he had 69 points and had played all 82 games. Not flashy, not loud, but incredibly effective. And more importantly, he had earned the full trust of Ovechkin, a player who didn't trust easily. It became clear that while Ovechkin was the engine of the Capitals' offense, Bäckström was the steering wheel. He guided the play, made the decisions, and controlled the rhythm. And as their partnership grew, so did the Capitals' reputation as one of the most dangerous teams in the league. Bäckström didn't arrive in the NHL with hype or noise. He arrived with purpose. And while most fans focused on the goals, the hits, and the celebrations, he was laying the foundation for something much bigger. Because behind every Ovechkin one-timer, there was almost always a Bäckström setup. And behind every explosive highlight, there was a quiet genius pulling the strings. This was just the beginning. The league hadn't fully realized it yet, but Nicklas Bäckström was about to change how the game was played, one smart, simple pass at a time. By the late 2000s, the Washington Capitals had one of the most dangerous power plays in the NHL. Ovechkin's one-timer from the left circle became iconic. Fans knew it was coming. Goalies knew it was coming. Opponents built entire game plans around stopping it. But still, it kept working. And the main reason? Nicklas Bäckström. He wasn't the one scoring the goals. He wasn't the one bombing shots from the blue line. But what he did, how he handled the puck, how he moved it, how he waited, changed everything. It wasn't just passing, it was control. And once he settled into his spot on the half wall, the power play started to revolve around him. The half wall between the boards and the face-off circle is where Bäckström did his best work. It gave him space, it gave him angles, and most importantly, it gave him options. From that position, he could pass in any direction, up to the point for Mike Green's booming shot, across to Ovechkin waiting in his office, down low for a quick give and go with Alexander Semin, or even sneak a pass through the slot, catching defenders flat-footed. What made Bäckström special wasn't just that he could make all those passes, it's that he knew when to make them. He had a rare ability to wait, to hesitate, and to force defenders into making the first move, and once they moved, he punished them. He didn't rush. He made the game come to him. One of Bäckström's sneakiest weapons was the no-look pass, but unlike most players who use it as a flashy trick, Bäckström used it as a strategy. He'd catch the puck, glance at the point, and hold it for just a second too long. The defense would bite, shifting their box, drifting toward the top, and just like that, he'd fire a pass down low or slide it through a narrow lane to Ovechkin. It didn't always lead to a goal right away. Sometimes it just forced the defense to scramble. But when you scramble against Ovechkin, Green, or Semin, it usually doesn't end well. That delay, that half-second hesitation, was everything. Because in that time, he could read 4 defenders, 2 of his own teammates, and the goalie. And he almost always made the right choice. His passes weren't always hard, they weren't always fast, but they were perfectly placed. That made him unpredictable. One shift he'd set up Ovi 3 times in a row. The next, he'd fake the pass entirely and thread it back to Green, who'd then hammer it home. Backstrom didn't just move the puck, he moved the chess pieces on the ice, and the power play became his board. For a few years, it felt like the Capitals' power play was unstoppable. In 2009-10, they finished with the best power play in the league, an eye-popping 25.2% success rate. Teams just couldn't figure it out. Coaches tried switching to more aggressive penalty kills. That didn't work. They tried collapsing toward Ovechkin. That left too much space up top. They even tried face-guarding Backstrom to take him out of the play entirely, but he'd still find ways to make clean passes under pressure. Advanced stats started showing how valuable he really was. His primary assists per 60 minutes on the power play were among the highest in the league. But even more interesting was his puck control time. On average, Backstrom held the puck longer per possession than most elite forwards, and yet he rarely turned it over. That told the full story. He wasn't just a setup man, he was the play driver. Other teams started taking notes. Slowly, you saw more clubs placing their best passer, not their best scorer, on the half wall. Young players were taught to think on the power play, not just react. Coaches talked about patient possession, a term almost never used before Backstrom's rise. And all of it, the stats, the adjustments, the systems, came from a guy who rarely spoke, rarely celebrated, and never called attention to himself. What made Backstrom's power play presence so unique wasn't just what he did with a puck, but what he made everyone else do. Opponents had to adjust, teammates had to stay ready, coaches had to change. And even when the Capitals didn't score, you could feel it. The way the puck moved, the way defenders looked nervous, the way the crowd held its breath when Backstrom had it on his stick. That's not just passing, that's control. And this wasn't even his peak yet. The full impact of Nicklas Bäckström's power play mastery was still growing, because once the playoffs arrived and the pressure cranked up, he'd show the hockey world just how far his quiet genius could take them. As the years went by, Nicklas Bäckström became more than just a smart playmaker or a reliable half-wall weapon. He became the heart of the Washington Capitals system, steady, unshaken, and always a step ahead. He wasn't loud about it. He didn't need to be. His game spoke for him. And eventually, so did the A on his jersey. Bäckström was named an assistant captain for the Capitals, a quiet recognition of the leadership role he had already been playing for years. It wasn't about giving speeches in the locker room or calling out mistakes on the bench. It was about setting a standard, arriving early, making the right play, showing younger guys how to think the game, not just play it. In a room filled with personality and flash, especially with Ovechkin leading the way, Bäckström balanced things out with calm and focus. During the late 2000s and early 2010s, the Capitals became one of the most dominant regular season teams in the NHL. They won President's trophies. They led the league in scoring. They crushed teams with their power play. And while Ovechkin was the headline, scoring 40, 50, even 60 goals, Bäckström was the engine quietly running underneath it all. It's easy to look at Ovechkin's record-setting numbers and only see the goals. But every highlight reel one-timer, every milestone celebration usually started the same way, with a Bäckström pass. A soft dish into space, a delayed feed through traffic, a perfectly timed setup from behind the net. It was never forced, it was never rushed, and it almost always gave Ovechkin the one thing he needed most: time. The truth is, Ovechkin wouldn't be the NHL's all-time power play goal leader without Bäckström. That's not an insult. That's just hockey. Even the greatest scorers need someone who knows when and how to get them the puck, and nobody knew that better than number 19. But Backstrom's role wasn't just about feeding Ovi. He was the centerpiece of how the Capitals played. Their system relied on possession, patience, and passing. It was built around his strengths. When he had the puck, everyone moved with purpose. When he didn't, the ice felt less organized. Coaches came and went, Bruce Boudreau, Dale Hunter, Adam Oates, but Backstrom's style stayed consistent. He adjusted without losing what made him special. If the team needed more defense, he gave it. If they needed him to shoot more, he picked his spots. If they needed someone to calm the game down, he did it with a simple pivot and a smart pass. It wasn't just skill, it was trust. His teammates trusted him to make the right decision, whether it was a no-look feed across the crease or a bank pass off the boards to reset the zone. You rarely saw him panic. You rarely saw him try to do too much. He played within himself, and somehow that made everyone around him better. And through it all, he stayed loyal to Washington. No trade rumors, no drama, just a player who showed up, played at an elite level, and helped his superstar teammate chase history. By this point in his career, Bäckström had become a quiet legend, someone who didn't demand attention but earned respect across the league. Opposing players talked about how difficult it was to read him. Coaches told young centers to watch his tape. Analysts started using his name when describing other smart passers. He wasn't trying to become the face of the league. He was just trying to do his job better than anyone else. And for over a decade, he did exactly that. But for all the regular season wins and individual highlights, something was still missing. The Capitals were one of the best teams in the league, but year after year they fell short in the playoffs. And as the losses piled up, the pressure grew. Bäckström had proven everything there was to prove as a player. But could his style, his patience, and his quiet leadership finally carry the Capitals to a Stanley Cup? That answer would come soon enough, and it wouldn't be easy. The 2018 Stanley Cup run was the moment everything changed. Not just for the Washington Capitals, but for Nicklas Bäckström. For over a decade, the team had come close so many times, only to fall short in the playoffs. Critics said they weren't built for the grind, that Ovechkin couldn't win, that Backstrom's calm style didn't work when the pressure hit hardest. But in 2018, they proved all of that wrong, together. What many people forget is that Bäckström wasn't even fully healthy during that run. In the second round against the Penguins, he suffered a hand injury that forced him out of the lineup for 4 games. It was the type of injury that would sideline most players for weeks, but Bäckström came back, still hurt, still recovering, because his team needed him. He wore extra padding, adjusted his grip, and found ways to contribute without complaining. Even with a weak shot and limited strength in his hand, he kept making smart passes and running the power play like usual. His injury didn't change how he saw the ice. If anything, it just showed how tough he really was. When the Capitals reached the Eastern Conference Final, they ran into a Tampa Bay team loaded with speed and scoring. After falling behind in the series, the pressure was suffocating. Every shift mattered. Every pass had weight. That's where Backstrom's calm leadership became vital. He didn't panic. He didn't try to do too much. He simply slowed the game down, kept everyone focused, and found ways to deliver at the right moments. In Game 7, he set up a perfect goal to ice the series, helping Washington reach their first Stanley Cup final in 20 years. Even in the biggest games of his career, Bäckström still played with that same smooth patience, and it worked. The Capitals beat Tampa in 7 games. In the Stanley Cup final against Vegas, all eyes were on Ovechkin, but behind the scenes, it was Bäckström pulling the strings. He had 6 assists in the 5-game series, including a crucial one in Game 5 that helped break the tie. While others celebrated loudly, Bäckström just nodded and skated back to the bench, business as usual. And in the locker room, his voice finally came out. Teammates later shared how he spoke up before the finals, something he rarely did. It wasn't a speech filled with yelling or emotion, it was short, direct, about sticking together, about being ready, and the guys listened. When the final buzzer sounded in Game 5 and the Capitals finally lifted the cup, it wasn't just a win for Ovi or the fans, it was a win for Bäckström. A quiet genius who had spent his whole career making others look better had finally gotten what he deserved. He didn't raise the cup first, he didn't ask for the spotlight, but everyone knew they don't get there without him. After the high of 2018, the next few years were harder for Nicklas Bäckström. Age and miles began to catch up with him. The game was still in his head, but his body wasn't always able to follow. For years, he had quietly played through aches and pain, but eventually, the damage added up, especially in his left hip, which had bothered him for a long time. In 2022, Bäckström made a tough decision. He underwent resurfacing surgery, a rare and serious procedure that had ended the careers of many athletes. There were no guarantees he'd ever play again. The recovery was slow, the rehab was frustrating, but Bäckström stayed focused. He wanted to come back, not because he needed more goals or records, but because he loved the game, and he still believed he could help. When he returned to the Capitals lineup, he wasn't the same skater. The burst of speed was gone, the shifts were shorter, but the hockey brain, that was still elite. Bäckström still knew where to be, where his teammates were going, and how to find passing lanes nobody else saw. The Capitals adjusted his role. He saw more time on the second power play unit, where he could work against slower defenders. He played deeper in the zone, using his experience to set up younger players. He wasn't the centerpiece anymore, but he was still valuable. It was bittersweet, watching a player known for such sharp control now move a little slower, needing to choose moments more carefully. But at the same time, it showed just how smart and adaptable he was. Bäckström didn't chase the game, he reshaped his role to keep contributing. Even off the ice, his leadership became more important than ever. New faces came into the Capitals' locker room, and Bäckström helped them feel at home. He gave advice, broke down plays, and reminded them what it took to win. For fans, it was a quiet, graceful transition, from star to mentor. And while no one knows how much longer Bäckström will play, one thing is clear. Even in the later chapters of his career, he never stopped making a difference. Because players like Nicklas Bäckström don't just fade away, they evolve, and their impact lasts far longer than any stat sheet ever will. For most of his career, Nicklas Bäckström wasn't the guy making headlines. He wasn't the one jumping into the glass after goals or going viral for wild moves. But sometimes, greatness doesn't need to be loud. And now, as fans and experts look back, Bäckström's legacy is finally getting the deeper recognition it deserves. He wasn't just one of the best passers of his era, he helped change how the modern NHL plays offense. Coaches, young players, and even front offices began to see value in what Bäckström brought: patience, precision, and the ability to make everyone around him better. If you watch some of today's brightest young playmakers, guys like Elias Pettersson, Trevor Zegras, or Matty Beniers, you'll notice a bit of Bäckström in their game. The way they slow things down, the way they look off defenders, the way they use body language to sell a pass or control space on the power play. That calm, composed style has become more common in today's NHL, and Bäckström helped lead the way. Back when most highlight reels were filled with speed and shots, he showed that there's value in thinking the game. That smart puck movement and vision could win games just as much as a slap shot from the point. It's no surprise that so many young centers today study his tape, not because he was flashy, but because he was effective, over and over again. When you dig into the numbers, the full picture becomes even clearer. From 2007 to 2020, Bäckström ranked top 5 in the entire NHL for primary assists at even strength and on the power play. That means he wasn't just getting secondary credit, he was the guy directly setting up the play that scored. His ability to generate high danger chances was elite. Another stat that stands out: zone entries with control. Bäckström consistently brought the puck into the offensive zone without dumping it in. That allowed his team to set up instead of chasing. It might not show up in the box score, but it helped keep pressure on the opponent, which often led to scoring chances. He also had an extremely low turnover rate compared to other high-volume puck handlers. While many top-line players took risks that led to giveaways, Bäckström found a way to be both creative and careful. That's a rare mix. In short, the analytics confirm what fans always sensed: Bäckström made the smart play almost every time. And in a game where one small mistake can turn into a goal against, that kind of consistency was priceless. Over the years, many players and coaches have praised Bäckström's hockey IQ, but one quote that stands out came from his longtime coach, Barry Trotz, during the Capitals Cup winning season. He said, "Nick is the most underrated superstar I've ever coached. He sees the game like a coach, but plays it like a magician. He makes plays that only a handful of players in the world can make, but he never shows off about it." That captures it perfectly. Bäckström wasn't playing for attention, he was playing to win, and he earned deep respect from the people who shared the ice with him. Ovechkin has often said that without Bäckström, none of his records would be possible, and when the team celebrated Stanley Cup win, it was clear how much his teammates appreciated him. Not just for the passes, but for the steady presence he brought to the locker room every single season. Nicklas Bäckström may not have had the flashiest style. He didn't chase the spotlight, but the game changed around him, and in many ways, because of him. Today's NHL is faster, more creative, and more intelligent than ever before. And when you trace that shift back, you'll find a soft-spoken Swede at the center of it, a player who proved that vision, timing, and patience can be just as powerful as speed and power. His legacy won't just be measured in points, it'll be measured in the next generation of players who see the game the way he did, and try to play it with the same quiet brilliance. So, should Nicklas Bäckström be remembered as just a passer, or the playmaker who quietly changed how hockey works? For years, he flew under the radar while flashier names stole the spotlight. But if you look closely at the systems teams run today, at the way young stars think the game, at the record sitting next to Ovechkin's name, you start to realize that Bäckström wasn't just part of the machine. He was the one turning the gears. Was he underrated, or was he just so good at making things look easy that we forgot how hard it really was? Let me know what you think in the comments. Is Bäckström one of the greatest passers of all time, or one of the most important players of his era, period? And if you want to hear the story of another pair of two quiet legends who changed the game without ever seeking the spotlight, watch our video on Daniel and Henrik Sedin. Their journey is proof that you don't have to be loud to be legendary. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. These documentaries take countless hours of research, writing, and editing, and every like and sub helps us keep telling the stories that matter in hockey history. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.